Hi, Lexi. My name's Emma. I'm going to be your career counselor today. Have you ever been in career counseling before?
I have not. This is a first.
All right. Well, I can go ahead and give you a quick run through of what career counseling is going to look like for us. So in this first session, we're just going to kind of relax, learn about who you are. And then I will have some career assessments for you that if you would be willing to take those for me, they're gonna better assist us in this process. And like I said, yeah, we'll just go ahead and talk about like different aspects of your personality, any experience you have already, any dreams, aspirations, likes, dislikes, all of those things. And that'll be in the first one. And then the second one, we're just kind of going to go over those assessments. This one is probably going to be the longest session that we have, considering that there will be a lot of information to go over. And then in that process, I, of course, want you to discuss anything that really jumped out at you first, and then we can kind of see where that goes. And then the third one, we're going to kind of go over the career outcomes from the assessments and then kind of match those together, maybe talking about a little bit about our first session and then our second session, kind of matching those together and seeing how those different aspects kind of align into your future career planning, any academic necessities for the career path that grabs your attention, basically wrapping up the sessions, and then we can talk about any issues or concerns that you have along the way. And if you have any questions throughout any of this process, obviously feel free to ask, or any concerns that you have. Does that sound okay for you?
Yes, all sounds great.
All right. So let's start off. What brings you into career counseling?
So basically, I've kind of been on track. I'm in a master's program for clinical mental health counseling. I think that I would like to go beyond that. It is a terminal degree, but I think I would like to look at doctorate programs, and I'm not really sure, where to go from there. So,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely, as we're talking about everything, we'll kind of touch back on that main concern that you just shared with me, and see if we can find more insight in any of these sessions that we have in helping you with that. Okay, so then, like I said, this first session, we're just gonna kind of talk about who you are, who's Lexi, different aspects of your personality. We can start with maybe experiences, past, any obligations you have would be really good to talk about. Um, you can start wherever you want to start, and then if I feel like maybe I need to question a little bit more, different parts of who you are. Obviously, if you're comfortable answering, I'll do that. But yeah, you can start however you want to start. Um, just a little bit about yourself.
yeah. So I obviously already mentioned that I'm in a master's program. Previous to that, I have always kind of worked within the medical field. My father was a rheumatologist, so I started being like a medical assistant, for him, and I really liked that. Like I love the one-on-one with patients. I love being, kind of people oriented. After that, I worked at Shadyside Hospital. So again, another medical job, similar job responsibilities.
Yeah.
And then now, while I'm in school, I've been working at a PT facility as a rehabilitation aide, and I absolutely love it. Again, a lot of like one-on-one with people and just getting to work with people and help rehabilitate them. And it's awesome. I really enjoy it. But I have not yet had a job that is, specific to counseling or within the mental health field, thus far.
Mhm. But it seemed to have a lot of experience just working with people in general, and especially I would have to say in both of those professions, very intimate relations with people. Um, so all right, okay, so that is kind of your like a background on um uh different professions that you've worked in. And then school experience, you said that you're in school now, for counseling. And then you mentioned some of your family having a background in the medical field as well. Okay. So how about you? How about what are some wants, needs, likes, dislikes in any aspect of a profession that you seem fit for you?
I definitely feel, you really kind of picked up on, highlighted one of the big things is I am very people oriented. I don't feel like I would be happy if I wasn't getting any interaction whatsoever. In terms of like the stuff that I want for my career, the one big thing that I love about this rehabilitation job is I'm kind of running around all day long. I'm exercising. I'm not in one place whatsoever. So for me, one of the big things I want to incorporate in the future is activity. I could never just be sitting at a desk or like behind like in a cubicle. So I would say outside of work, I love nature and I'd really like to incorporate within, my counseling or whatever it is with my doctorate, wherever I end up, I want it to be nature based. I want to not be, restrained into like a room with no windows.
Yeah. No,
So
absolutely.
that's super important to me.
Okay, yeah. So just making sure that you have like that people aspect, but also being able to share that passion that you have for the outdoors, nature. And I mean, that I feel like it's something that can be done. It's not like completely, out of the works, like people who aren't in counting and, like they want to aspects of nature and stuff that would be a little bit more difficult. But I think with this, there's a lot more flexibility. So that's good to know, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So, let's see. Um, what about some past, uh, like any dreams or aspirations that you have when it comes to, because you said that you weren't sure if you wanted to go the next step, doctoral level. What are some dreams that you have and goals that you have with that?
Well, I feel like, I know that I probably could hit a lot of the marks with my master's degree. I know that like there is like nature-based therapists and stuff like that, but I also really like the thought of maybe teaching.
Mhm.
I do enjoy being kind of in a teaching role. I like, being able to model and feel, I would say like in terms of overarching dream for the whole thing, I wanna feel like what I'm doing, even if it's small scale, is making a difference, like, on a more global level.
Mhm.
I think that's why I've liked my previous jobs, because even if I was working, even just a smaller position, I feel like I'm genuinely aiding others in a way that's bigger than just the position itself. So, that's something that's important to me. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to manifest, but it has to provide me some sort of deeper meaning, or I'm just gonna feel like I'm wasting time.
Absolutely. And with the professor role, I think that that does show that kind of impact that you do want to make in more of a larger scale. So yeah, no, we can absolutely look into that as we continue our sessions. So what about any kinds of location, like any desire with kind of like locate like where you're located? Would you be open to, traveling out more? Or do you want to stay local?
Well, I definitely, especially, I was thinking about this, especially with wanting to do the nature-based. It rains a lot in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Um, and definitely, we have the four seasons, so that could kind of implicate things. I'm super duper open to traveling. I thought about maybe going out west, but then the one thing that does kind of throw a wrench in that plan is that my family is very small. It's just my mom and my sister, and I'm very close with them.
Mhm.
Um, you know, my mom's not old, but she's older. And so that's kind of where I don't know. I'm almost thinking that maybe somewhere that's still not in Pittsburgh, but not as far as my original plan of like Oregon. I would love to go to Oregon, maybe like West Virginia. Like, still, I could get in a car, I can drive to her if I need to,
Absolutely.
type of thing.
Okay, so it's very important for you to be able to, if you were to go out of the area, be able to come back in if you needed to, family emergencies, this and that. Okay, no, absolutely, yeah. And then any other obligations that you have when it comes to picking a career or a career path?
I would think no. I mean, I would say that I want to make sure that, after all this schooling, it's something that I could live comfortably. That's not the first thing, but I also want to make sure that it is something that if it is just me, because it's just me right now, like I don't have a partner at this moment. I want to make sure that on my own, I can afford the things that I will need.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, and when we open up our your assessments and stuff like that, we can look at other jobs and then of course we can pull up sheets where it shows you the pay and we can kind of talk about what would be an ideal pay. Um considering that you've mentioned a couple professions thus far, there might be a little bit of differences in some of them. Maybe not too drastic, but again, we can look at those numbers. Um Right, and anything else that you would like to share that maybe would help us and guide us in this little journey that we got going on? Mm.
Um, I think I pretty much touched on most of it. I am artistically inclined, so I've also thought of like, I wonder how I could incorporate that. I feel as though I have a lot a lot of ideas. But I would say we pretty much hit all of it.
Yeah. And it sounds like, I mean, being that you have a lot of ideas and I mean, you've mentioned a couple different things that kind of have left us with a very I feel like I'm very hopeful going into this that we'll see a lot of like um openness and broad uh options for you. Again, that might be kind of like a double-edged sword there. It might be a little bit harder to narrow it down, but if we can find a couple things that you can look at and we can talk about more and see how those align, um then maybe it could help you a little bit with that concern that you mentioned earlier. So yeah.
Absolutely. I feel like there's options.
Yeah, there's definitely options. Yeah. No, and especially in the field, like I think that it's really awesome to hear that you have all of these passions and I am very hopeful that we could maybe fit these passions into some of the in some of the professions that you discussed. So it'll be really interesting to see how we can match those up.
Absolutely.
All right. All right. Well, then I will send you off with assessments. I will email them to you. And then if you could have those completed for me, if you have any questions or concerns while you're taking them, you can email me as well. And then we'll go over them on the next session.
Sounds good. Thank you, Emma.
All right. I'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye. Hi, Lexi. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too. So how did it go with all the assessments?
It went well. I honestly wasn't very shocked by my results.
Yeah.
I feel like it aligns pretty well. So,
Awesome. No, that's good to hear that you like found some good stuff and insight into your personality. So I will start with the first assessment, which is the 16 personalities, and we can kind of just go over it. Um, and while I'm getting that open, is there anything that kind of like stood out to you in that assessment that you would like to start talking about first?
um, I would just say that overall, I just resonated with a lot of it. I was surprised. I wasn't sure how it was gonna go. Because although I really love being around people and the extroverted makes sense, I also do actually like to have a little bit of time to recoup.
Mm,
Um, but I would say overall, it really hit on a lot of the things that I have already been feeling and have noticed that I like in regards to working with people and needing kind of deeper meaning, like altruism and stuff in my job. So it made sense to me.
yeah. And like we had talked about before, your past jobs that you've had have been in a very kind of intimate way. So it does make sense that you would see that reflected in this assessment. And then it sounds like with the extroverted, you find yourself being extroverted, but not like to any extremes, definitely still needing that time, that me time to recuperate. All right. So we'll just quickly just go over kind of the introduction, and then I really do want to hit on the strengths, and then we'll say areas of development. We got career paths, and then I definitely want to hit the workplace habits and see what we can find in those parts of the assessment. So first, you are a protagonist and you feel to serve a greater purpose in life, thoughtful, idealistic. These personality types strive to have a positive impact on other people and the world around them, which definitely falls in line with a lot of the things that you've said thus far. Um, Rarely shying away from an opportunity to do the right thing, even when doing so is far from easy. I definitely think that comes with maybe the profession that you've been talking about. Maybe not shying away from a challenge, especially when it comes to dealing with people. Um, Protagonists are born leaders, which explains why these personalities can be found among many notable politicians, coaches, and teachers. And you had discussed that you would be interested in maybe being a professor, that impact that you could have. And we'll discuss that further in the different assessments that we have. But passion and charisma allow them to inspire others, not just in their careers, but in every area of their life. So we have a lot of what I see, a lot of similar words of what you've already said. Um, the altruism, the authenticity, having that deeper connection with people.
I
Um,
also agree with like the speaking up for what's right, and even when it's hard, because I have noticed about myself that just personality wise, I have a very strong viewpoint like of what, my values. And if I feel that something isn't that's going against that and is being harmful to a person in some way, I also feel like that is a very prominent thing for me as well.
and do you see that kind of translating into um like professional life, or is that more so like a personal life kind of?
Both. I mean, in the jobs that I've worked, there is a very strong necessity to be ethical and to make sure that people aren't, falling through the cracks and everybody's getting fair treatment. Whether it's in, the strictly medical field or absolutely within counseling. So I
Mhm.
would say in regards to both, that's
Yeah,
something I've noticed.
absolutely, yeah. All right. And then getting involved. Protagonists care about someone. They want to help solve that person's problems, sometimes at any cost. And that kind of just goes along with, what counseling is and what it means to be in that profession, helping people through their problems and whatnot. Um, and then we have leading the way, ready to fly slings and arrows in order to stand up for people and ideas that they believe in. That kind of just goes with along with what you said, just making sure that you're sticking to your values and who you are in both your personal life and professional life. So great. So we're gonna go into the strengths, and like I said, we'll say not weaknesses, but we'll say areas of development.
I
Um,
like that better.
So first we have receptive. They have strong opinions, but they're far from closed-minded. They recognize the importance of allowing others to express themselves fully, even when protagonists don't agree with someone. They recognize that person's right to voice their truth. Is that something that you felt like kind of resonated with you?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think that, I it just kind of speaks to what I said about having the strong values, but I also know that I am very open to other points of view, just on the basis that we all have the right to voice our opinion. So I definitely resonate with that as well.
And then reliable, few things bother protagonists more than the prospect of letting down a person or causing that they or cause that they believe in. People with this personality type can be counted on to see their promises and responsibilities through, even when it's difficult to do so. Um, all good strengths, I would say that I think we'll be able to see in our final session kind of correlate with the professions that you're talking about. So that'll be really interesting to talk about and make those connections. Altruistic, like we said, the deep desire to be a force for positive change. And then charismatic, determined, and inspiring. Protagonists often find their way into leadership roles, and I think that that kind of goes along with the extrovertedness that we talked about. And then honestly, your experience with people in general, I'm sure has built that skill up because charisma is kind of a skill. So to see that reflected in your assessment, it's clearly, been probably more of a refined skill for you. So here we go. And then the areas of development, unrealistic, put pressure on themselves to right every wrong that they encounter, but no matter how hard these personalities strive, it just isn't realistic for them to solve all of the world's problems. Overly idealistic, protagonists tend to have clear ideas about what's right and what's wrong. Here we go. Condescending, people with this personality type enjoy teaching others, particularly about the causes and beliefs that matter so much to them. But at times, protagonist attempts to enlighten others. I'm assuming that enlighten others may come across as patronizing. And then intense when it comes to self-improvement, protagonists are rarely short on energy or determination. But they may not recognize that not everyone shares these qualities. Here we have overly empathetic. Compassion is among this personality type's greatest strength, but protagonists have the tendency to take on other people's problems as their own. Are there any areas of development that maybe stood out to you or felt like resonated with you?
I would say it's just because with me having kind of some very strong principles, I do have to remind myself that maybe other people don't abide by those in the same way, and that can be frustrating. But the other big thing that really stood out, and I think has been something that I've had to be aware of, even in the jobs I've had, and I definitely think in the future, is just the tendency to not have enough boundaries with my compassion and empathy. Um, I think that's something that's so blatant that I have to be mindful of. And just in the sense of like avoiding burnout, because I do have a tendency to just give and give and give to the point where I think that's something that I have to develop just so I can be my best self to, better help other people. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think your reflection on that is very spot on, and it clearly sounds like you have a great a sense of awareness of this, that this has been something that you have been thinking about. So that is great to hear, specifically since you are looking into professions that deal with people and also very intimate settings, that it would be uh very important to set those boundaries and make sure that you're not overexerting yourself with the empathy and the giving. So all right, that's good to hear. So let's go and talk about the career paths. Um, were you able to look at this part? Is there anything that kind of like jumped out at you with the career paths? I know it does talk about, like we have here, finding the deeper issues, kind of connecting with people on a deeper level. Something that you discussed was very important. Um, And then it says here, earning their place. Thanks to their emotional intelligence and social skills, protagonists can excel in nearly any people-oriented field, such as human resources, event management, etc. That said, they tend to feel especially motivated in positions where they can guide others to learn, grow, and become more independent. Hmm.
yeah, I definitely think like So for me, the meaning does not come from just like manipulating others or having control of others or anything like that. Like that's not anything that I'm interested in. And I don't even mean in an extreme sense. I'm thinking of like enterprising or like
Yeah.
sales or whatever. Like that's not where I'm super duper interested in or find meaningful. It is more so that part about, guiding others and helping them grow. I like seeing when people get better in terms of like when I'm rehabilitating them. And in the same sense, I think I'll really enjoy seeing if I can somehow help somebody, like mold somebody and help them grow into whatever, whether it is the counseling or teaching. So I definitely align with that, I feel like.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it makes sense. I feel like I'm starting to see a really strong pattern with you that you do typically you have these set of skills and this is where you want to place them rather than like you said the enterprising, the business aspect of it not really your thing, but the skills that would be beneficial in those uh aspects of your assessment are very beneficial and others that more align with what we've talked about. So that's really good. And then let's see. Hmm. I think that here, let's just say at the end, versatile, insightful protagonists bring a wealth of strengths to their careers. At times they may feel stuck or bored, wishing that their daily tasks could take more of an obvious difference in the world, but with their altruistic creative spirits, these personalities almost inevitably find ways to use their work. I think that's really interesting that it says um that you do want to make an obvious difference in the world because that is something that you said that you do want to make a kind of a greater impact and that I think that fell along more with the teaching aspect that you talked about.
It's
Um,
nice to see. It's nice
yeah.
to see if you are, making a little bit of impact, no matter how big or small.
No, absolutely. And you never know. I mean, the butterfly effect, like, once
Yeah.
you're affecting one person and then they affect 10 more people and then those 10 people affect 20 more people and it goes on and on. So it exists. That's how it works. So you never know.
Well, even research, like if I do, I'm more interested in the teaching aspect of continuing education, but there would be some sort of research involved. And, um, maybe whatever it is that I'm researching, I can come up with a program or I can find some insight into helping a problem that would also be a more tangible way of being like, okay, like this is actually making a difference in some sense. So I could see that maybe being something as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like investing your time in a research that could possibly benefit a population or you are very passionate about nature, having that kind of research towards um, those aspects would also be very impactful. So yeah, absolutely. So here we have workplace habits. Is there anything that kind of like stood out to you in this segment uh specifically that you want to discuss first?
Um, uh, Maybe not specifically. I guess I do align with the little green quote there about how my strengths can also be a double-edged sword. I think this kind of relates back to the boundaries thing of like if I'm not careful, sometimes because I do want to prove myself, because I value, you know, doing well at my job. That is like a personal thing that's important to me. Whatever it is that I do, I want to make sure that I'm doing it really well. I think sometimes, maybe superiors that could be taken advantage of a little bit, but I don't
Yeah.
know, maybe I'll do private practice and I'll be my own superior.
Oh, I mean, that's an option as well. Yeah, we can discuss that, especially if that's something that I mean, obviously going through any program, you are supervised, but if that's something that you feel like would be really beneficial to your lifestyle and who you are and your values, then we can absolutely look at that as well. And then yeah, like you said, too much of a good thing is not
I
Good.
think too
So
much about that stuff for sure.
yeah, no, absolutely. And especially with the empathy part and stuff like that, that's all stuff that you seem to be very well aware of. So, all right. So let me stop sharing this and we will kind of go into your focus two, or actually, yeah, I'll go into the focus two and then we will kind of examine the work interest assessment and the three categories that you got, and then we'll kind of look at the Holland Hexagon. We'll talk a little bit about that. Let me share. Okay. So here we have your focus two. So we'll go over this a little bit, but for the most part, I will talk about um escaping me. All right. Uh the work interest assessment. So you got social, artistic, and investigative. So how do you feel about those in a way of describing your work interest?
I definitely feel like that's very fitting. I mean, the social, I mean, that's just obvious at this point from, what we talked about and like the helping nature. Artistic, I am actually very much I know I touched upon it a little bit in our first session. I love to do art, all different medias. I play instruments. I like to be able to be creative.
Yeah.
So I definitely feel like that's also very fitting. And even the investigative, I am very I switch into the cognitive a lot. I do like to be I like to think about stuff. I'm very intrigued. I'm also interested, like I said, with maybe like a little bit of the research because I find all of that super intriguing. I just wouldn't want that to be the totality of what I do since I'm so social.
Okay.
So
Yeah, no, that's definitely good to keep in mind. And I would have to agree based on the things that you've told me, all three are seem to be very prominent in the discussion that we've had. Um, so let's see. It's a long, long list of other occupations that you want to consider, but I want to find the ones that were very um more so prominent in what you've had as for scores. Um, we'll have to probably look at that at our last session. I'll have that more pulled up and more individualized, especially the ones that you've talked about. I definitely want to have those up and ready for you. But let's stop sharing this and let me look at the Holland hexagon and we can kind of look at that real quick. So what's interesting about your scores is typically when it comes to Holland's theory and this hexagon is that um oh, I guess it actually matches up. Never mind, scratch that thought. Here, so what we have here with the Holland hexagon is that they typically align with each other. So what you have here, I believe you scored higher in the social, the helpers. So then you have the creators, but typically if you score higher in the social, you would kind of go more towards the persuaders and the enterprising. So you would have your helpers and then you would be off to the side. But here we have you more so helpers, creators, and thinkers. Which, like we said, it aligns very well with everything that you've said and in the assessments that we've talked about. Um, so as you can see too, like if you go to the exact opposite, it's kind of almost the exact opposite of what, you know, you scored high in creators, like the artistic side going into the more conventional side, would be less likely, um, to be associated with your personality and the assessments. So after that, we can kind of get into the sorry, there's just so many things. Oh, here here we have um the jobs that I was looking for on this one.
There you
So
go.
let's open that up and we'll just touch on this today because we're going to go more in depth in the trajectory of the professions that we talk about, and also like you talked about, you wanted to kind of be living in a certain um salary and like what's comfortable for you. So we'll be able to get more into that in depth in the last one. But here it says that you match for clinical psychologist. How does that make you feel?
I'm actually all about it. I always said that I was going to be a clinical psychologist, so it's very interesting that I kind of um, aligned into the trajectory of counseling. Um, I definitely think that that has the ability to touch upon multiple aspects, like of both, the social, but also I actually do really like a lot of investigative stuff. I like figuring out and seeing if there's like any correlation to cause and effect type stuff and just studying and observing things. I do like that. So I don't think that that's necessarily a bad choice whatsoever. I just don't know in terms of because my social and helping is so high, is that going to be too much in the research area? But I'm open, especially in terms of like future PhD. I'm happy that that's at least on there.
Absolutely, yeah. And there is so much to go with having a PhD in that field. I mean, there's so many possibilities, opens a lot of doors for you. And I think it opens a couple doors that you've talked about going through when it comes to like teaching and stuff like that. So that we'll talk more about that in our last session. But then we have here communication professor, education professor, English language and literature professor, foreign language professor, marriage and family therapist. This is something that you will be achieving with your education that you are now. So that would be something that, you know, we could talk about actually becoming in effect more short term, not so of a long term goal. Philosophy and religion professor, special ed, kindergarten, middle school, and preschool, substance abuse counselor, and tutor. Are any of these other ones kind of sticking out to you that maybe you would like to look in more in depth in our last session? It doesn't have
It's
to.
almost
Go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry, what?
No, I was just gonna. I'm sorry. I was just gonna add that it doesn't have to be only here because I know there are other ones as well. If any of these don't jump out to you, the ones that are down further we can look at as well.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that it specified marriage and family therapist and counseling psychologist is not on there because I know counseling psychologist is kind of the straightforward LPC,
Absolutely.
which is what I'm in. So I think that is a little bit lower. I would say not as specific and specialized. I definitely align with the fact that there's a lot of teaching stuff on there. That makes sense to me. I wouldn't say specifically. I mean, I guess technically if I was doing a PhD, I would be kind of an education professor of some sort. But I wouldn't just be, I'm obviously not in I'm not getting a degree in education right now.
No,
So
absolutely, yeah.
teaching to some degree, just not like those
That.
ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And then anything else that I know we discussed, I'm kind of just trying to think of what I should have open for us next session. So we talked about the clinical side of it.
Okay.
Oh, we're ending in 10 minutes. And the clinical side of it, we talked about the art. Is that something like I see right here, art therapist? Is that something that maybe you would like to look into a little bit more or?
That's a super intriguing. I know that that's a different track than what I did. I think I probably will incorporate aspects of art therapy, but maybe not be an art therapist. I
Yeah.
think a little lower there is the counseling psychologist. I am kind of interested in looking more into that just for the simple fact that that's the path that I'm on right now. So I kind of want to compare like the clinical psychologist with what I'm doing
Okay.
currently.
Yeah, so those two are definitely gonna be the ones that we look at. Um, and then we can also look at the professor side of it. I'll add that in there. And if there's anything else along the way, you could email me. That is the last assessment that we have to look at right now. But yeah, if you have any other questions, or any other professions that you see on this list that you want me, to be prepared to talk about, then you can just email me and and we'll go from there.
Sounds great.
All right. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Hi, Lexi. How are you doing today?
Good, thanks.
Good, awesome. So I was able to gather as much information as I could on some of the professions that we discussed. Um, Specifically, I think it would be something that you had talked about in our second session was the difference between clinical and counseling psychologists. And I was able to find two different things on ONET about one about clinical and one about counseling. And I was wondering if maybe together we can work through it and see if we can see any of the differences. So I will pull up clinical first through the shared screen. Maybe. Here we go. Oh, okay. Well, never mind. Counseling. We're starting with counseling then. Oh, technology. So we'll talk about the counseling psychologist, and that is assess and evaluate individuals' problems through the use of case history, interview, and observation, and provide individual or group counseling service to assist individuals in achieving more effective personal, social, educational, and vocational development and adjustment. So we can talk about maybe see if we can find any differences. Some of the tasks, uh, I'm seeing treatment plans, I'm seeing using the interviews, understanding personal interactive problems, um, assessments, evaluating results of counseling methods. So it looks like a lot of just like the in-person, one-on-one, also group settings that we talked about, something that's kind of important that you said, that intimacy between clients, and then here's a rundown of the knowledge, assuming that this is the career path that you are currently at almost at the end of achieving. Um, you probably have a good understanding of that, so we can unless do you have any questions about that aspect of it?
No,
Of the
I don't think so.
Okay, so we can move forward and try to see if we can find anything that maybe stands out to us. So we have active listening, social perceptiveness, reading comprehension, critical thinking, speaking, idea evaluation, writing, learning strategies, information organization. And then we have a lot of the other, um, looks like basics, testing. And then we have more of the abilities of importance. See, I think work activities will probably be the best to maybe identify the differences in these two fields. So getting information needed to do the job, so observing, receiving, and otherwise obtaining information, combining, evaluating, and reasoning with information, providing assistance or personal care to others. Um, We also have processing information, performing for or working with the public, communicating with other workers. I think that's something that some of these you find, I mean, almost in every profession. I think we want to find ones that kind of stand up to us. Coaching and developing others. Selling and influencing others. I think that that was something that you were not very interested in. I think we talked about in the personality assessment that that was something that not really aiming to align your skills with. Let me see. Okay, so let's look and see for the other one. We have clinical. So I see a lot more observing, analyzing, conducting, um, responding to client reactions, evaluating effective of counseling. So that seems to be a similarity. Um, Assessment is also in there. Utilizing treatment methods is also in there. So there seems to be a lot of similarities. Assist clients to gain insight. Plans, supervises, and conducts psychological research in fields such as personality development. I don't believe that the research part was in this one. It was not. The tasks seem to be, I mean, there are only 9 tasks in this one, but then there are 16 in the other one.
Mhm.
Interesting. I know I'm kind of going through this very fast. Is there anything that kind of like stood out to you in the differences or similarities?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they both really speak to my Holland code, like the social investigative, I guess not so much the artistic, but in terms of like this, the clinical psychologist seems much more investigative,
Mm.
whereas the counselor psychologist is much more social.
Mhm.
And I guess one, like the clinical psychologist seems more like you're seeing people, but you're observing them. You're not really like interacting with them as
Yeah.
much. Um, so, I mean, that's definitely something for me to consider. While I would find it incredibly interesting if I am, more so extroverted and I am more so social, it seems like the counseling actually gives me the ability to do aspects of both because there's still assessments, there's still the ability to do research to
Mhm.
some degree. So, I mean, it's definitely interesting. I almost wish that I aligned a little bit more with I do align, don't get me wrong, but that seems to be like kind of a big thing.
So you said you wish that you wanted to align more with the clinical side of it?
With the clinical psychologist, just because I have been pretty dead set on being a clinical psychologist. So like when you're reading the stuff and you're like, well, that doesn't it aligns, but maybe not as much as I thought it would.
Okay. So now you're
That's
kind of just having to
definitely.
like rewire your thinking a little bit. Like maybe this isn't as much as I thought it was going to be for me as maybe the counseling track would be. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I'm so social that I don't know if I would get enough of the actual intimate one-on-one, personable relationships um in the clinical psychologist. I'm not rooting it out,
Mhm.
but that seems to be the very big difference to me between the two.
Absolutely. Okay. And I think when it comes to, so I do have other tabs open here where I was going to work through, well, we can start maybe by looking at different ways to look at the counseling and the clinical track. I also do have included the track that you are currently now with your master's. Unfortunately, with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it comes up as marriage and family therapist. Um, So we have here master's degree, like you said, and then this is the trajectory of pay, which is around 50,000 a year, ending up 23 per hour. Um, is that something that you would see, considering that you are on this track and you're almost um at your goal, is that something that you can see being within that comfort level of pay that you discussed?
I mean, I think
Based on the smile.
I won't go on a soapbox, but I definitely believe that the counseling profession is deserving of a much higher pay. I also feel that way about teachers and a lot of other service providers. Um, I wish it was higher.
Mhm.
I definitely see the difference between like the clinical psychology versus this. Um, I do know from my understanding that if I would go into private practice, this might not reflect that.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
um,
And that's
yeah,
something to consider, yeah. So, this is the number we see now, but there is a big potential for you to finish your degree and make more than that, make more around that comfort level that you were talking about. Yeah.
yeah. And if I add on teaching, which I still would like to do, that
Yeah.
would be like supplemental pay. So it might be, as I see it, kind of the best of both worlds if I did do like a nature-based counseling, but then also taught.
Mhm.
That might like, I don't know, even things out.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, no, I think that like, I mean, I feel like it would hit all of the things that you were talking about, so that definitely sounds like a liable option for you. So we can look at the numbers. Teaching post-secondary, so this would be considered after you have your PhD, if you wanted to be a professor at a university, this is the pay grade that you would have, so significantly larger by, like, 30,000. Um, we do have a much faster, um, job outlook for this as well, so that's also an option. Um, and then that does, like I said, comes with a PhD. Uh And then here we have, oh, no, let me go back. Okay. And then here we have the psychologist. So this would fall line more with the clinical psychologist that you talked about. It looks like typically it says although psychologists typically need a doctoral degree in psychology, master's degree is sufficient for some positions. So this pay, which is also significantly larger than the other one, um, may not reflect the master's degree position, but more so probably the doctorate degree. Um, and their also job outlook is 6%, so it's definitely out there. So yeah, no, there's definitely a significance in pay, but like you said, there is a lot of potential for you to make up for that in the different uh paths that you can take with counseling with just the masters. So yeah, that'll be really important to look at, especially as you continue your program. And then I also have here, oh, do you have any questions about that first before I move on from that? Anything that you wanted to
No,
look up?
I don't think so. I think it's interesting that the post-secondary teacher is actually pretty close to the upper end of the clinical psychologist. I mean, that's 79. The
Mhm.
clinical psychologist was 81. So that's pretty cool.
Absolutely, yeah. So within that, if you were to get your counseling PhD, then this could be an option for you that opens that door, like we said. So yeah, no, that's that it's looking on the up for you when it comes to, like when it comes to maybe getting these needs met in different professions that you've been exploring, um, and kind of maybe seeing where your doctorate could take you.
We're
So
gonna make it work.
you'll make it work. And I have no doubt about that. We looked at that personality assessment earlier, you'll make it work. Okay, so here we have Career One Stop is going to tell us kind of more on what the job description is. So first we'll start with the clinical and counseling psychologists. So here they group them together. Assess, diagnose, and treat mental and emotional disorders of individuals through observation, interview, and psychological tests. Kind of just going over again what we talked about. Outlook, bright. We have a bright outlook. Wow, and then we see 65,000 as of 2021, but in 2031 we're looking at 71, so nearly 10,000, 10% change, as it says. And doctoral professional degree, um, requiring an internship and residency, and then programs that prepare you. We have these, and I also have a program opened up. Duquesne, I'm not pushing you in any direction or whatnot, but I did want to give you an example of a possible program that maybe we can look at what it looks like, how it's structured real quick. But I will pull that up after we go through these. And then we have the mental health counselors. So this, I believe, would fall more in line with what you have with your degree currently that you're about to achieve. Counseling, advising individuals and groups to promote optimal mental and emotional health with an emphasis on prevention, dealing with family, parenting, marital problems, substance abuse, addictions, stress management, self-esteem. So we have 52% master's degree. So people with bachelors can also do that. And then, so most people in this field have masters, and that's where you will be at. Let's see, anything stand out for you for this one? Anything that you would want to talk more about, considering that this is more so something that is like, in view?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my skill set definitely aligns very well. I was just looking on the right-hand side there. Um, and my abilities, I also think that it's nice that there is this focus on prevention because I just think that that's a really wonderful way of like making the difference and giving back in some capacity on a larger, like more social level. Um, so, I mean, it definitely looks like something that would align with my traits
Mhm.
for sure.
All right, good to hear. And then again, we have the psychology teachers post-secondary. Um, and we're looking at a significant, I mean, that's only 90%, but from that 78, yeah, I think that remains consistent with the other thing that we talked about. Jeez. But there is potential for more, if you are ambitious and you want, to achieve a more comfortable living. Um,
So that would be the clinical psychology and then becoming a teacher on top of that.
so this would be so with this, you do need a PhD. So if you were to say go the clinical route or the counseling route with the PhD, then this option would open for you, considering that you do have the doctoral level degree.
I see.
And yeah, so you would be able to achieve this if you wanted to, or if you just wanted to stick with the clinical, or if you want to stick with the counseling. And here, I'll pull up this real quick, and then we can finish up with any questions or concerns you have. Um, so this is Duquesne's program for their PhD in clinical psychology. I know you were kind of seeing maybe more counseling, and there are programs out there, of course, especially within the area.
I'm
Um,
still interested. My undergrad was at Duquesne, which I
oh, okay.
totally did not mention. So I'm definitely interested.
Oh, so awesome. So yeah, you're familiar, so that's great. So we have a minimum of 73 credits, and I mean more in-depth courses, very specific, supervision, clinical, um, and internships, assistantships. Um, So there's an exam following their third year that you must take and complete, and then a dissertation After completing coursework, students are required to write a dissertation and successfully defend it. During this time, they must register every fall, spring semester. Um, and yeah, just looking for the requirements of the dissertation. But so that would be part of the doctoral program. It's not saying how long it specifically takes, considering that it's 73 credit hours. Um, oh, it says while it's possible to complete the program in 5 years, most students graduate in 6 or 7 years. Is that something that you feel like would be, oh, there's that face again. There's that smile again.
I mean, 6 and 7, like, that's definitely sounds like a little overwhelming.
Mhm.
Um, it's not that I'm not dedicated.
I don't think
I
that illustrates that at all either. I think the way you're feeling about that, it's very valid. Yeah.
I just I guess what would be ideal, and I don't know if this is an option anywhere, but if I could find something more around that 4 year,
Mm.
that would be, I mean, that would be ideal. But I am aware that doctorates, it's, that's a thing. That's a whole thing in itself. So, 7 years just sounds ill. That's like a lot.
Yeah, and that makes sense, like you said, you are in your master's now, so yeah, there's been a lot of school leading up to the point that you're at, and 7 years onto that is, yeah, it's overwhelming. Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, no, I mean, there are definitely other programs in the area that I think would be very important to look at that could fall into that line. Um, this was just kind of a little bit of an example, a little taste of what maybe it would look like. And I'm sure all programs are very different. Um,
I want to know who's completing it in 5 and like what are they doing? Because
yeah, no, yeah. The difference, but I mean, 5 years is a lot, but like 6 and 7 years, yeah, no, it is a lot. It is a lot. Yeah, and I 73 credits, I'd assume. I can't do the quick math now, but I definitely probably smushing it in there. And considering that you run your masters right now, you probably have a little taste of what it's like to make sacrifices.
And then I'm also thinking, just as we're looking at this, if I'm pursuing my licensure, like what does that look like? Because this is a full-time
Uh,
thing, like this is,
okay.
so that's also, it gives me a lot to think about
Yeah.
for sure.
All right. Yeah, no, and I mean, I'm glad that, we were able to work through some of this. Um, is there any other questions that like or any concerns that you have regarding the information that I mean, throughout the 3 sessions or just this session?
No, I mean, I feel like this definitely has helped let me explore things a lot because
Mhm.
there's a lot of overlap, but there's also like some big things, like for example, the fact that that would be committing to another 7 years and what would that look like?
Yeah.
I just definitely feel as though I got to look into this stuff a lot more deeper and look at it in a realistic sense because it's easy, I do tend to get very excited and imagine things, but like this is like, the cold hard facts.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I think with everything, there's positive and negatives, right? Um, I hope that, like what you said, kind of having a more like real sense of what this is, that maybe you'll see more what would be better for you right now versus maybe down the line. And then obviously exploring other programs that maybe fit more into your needs right now, especially if you are going for licensure. It would be extremely hard to finish it definitely in 5 years, but it'd be very difficult to do it in general, going through those two paths. But yeah, no, I loved working with you. I hope that you were able to find some insight um into more of that concern that you have. And obviously, if you have any other questions or like to arrange any other sessions, we can absolutely discuss doing more and talking more on this topic.
That sounds great. I really appreciate it. Very informative.
Yeah, good to hear.